to be a modest people with pretty high morals. As a matter of fact, I attempted to pass the hotel desk on my way to the beach across the walk, dressed in swim trunks, no uppers. The desk clerk was shocked at my nudity and shooed me back to my room lickety-split. Once you make the beach, though, anything goes for anybody. Those gold crowns are still quite stylish in Russia. They are much cheaper than porcelain, so many people have them. This gentleman is a native of Kenya in Africa. He is studying medicine at one of Russia's excellent schools. In 6 more months, he will graduate and return to his native Kenya to practice. Lisa, our chief in tours guide, met us in Moscow as soon as we deplaned. She will travel with us throughout the whole tour. Lisa is our good shepherd and interpreter. Without her, traveling in Russia for our English-speaking group would be next to impossible. Like most young Russian people, she is dedicated to physical culture. And her physical is very nicely cultured. Let's feast our eyes on more of these bikini-clad beauties. Jeremy is one of us decadent Americans. She is not one of the glorious workers. This is a glorious worker. It sort of makes you wonder what old Uncle Joe Stalin would say if he could see the present-day Yalta bathing beauties. If he were here today, I'll bet there'd be some new laws tomorrow. Yalta has been a very pleasant and entertaining experience. This is the first time we wish we could stay longer, but at this point, our tour is only half over. We have 5 cities and 7,000 miles to go. So it's do svidaniya to Yalta. The next stop on our tour is Pyatigorsk, just a short hop across the northeast corner of the Black Sea. Our bus is waiting to take us to the airport. So it's do svidaniya to you too. For just a little while. I'll see you in Pyatigorsk. Because Pyatigorsk lies nestled between 5 mountains, it has no airport large enough to accommodate a commercial transport. The nearest field was about 50 miles away. It was a tiresome bus ride, and most of us catnapped. But our tour leader went into a coma. Let me tell you about these Russian beds. They are a bit smaller than our twin size, certainly not large enough for 2 people. But every bed in every town has 2 thick pillows, one on top of the other. To this day, I can't think of a use for that second pillow. Pyatigorsk is a health resort town of about 70,000 people. Our main reason for being here is because it is the northern terminal of the Georgian military highway. We plan to ride a bus through the Caucasus on that most romantic road. In the meantime, we are exploring the mountains surrounding Pyatigorsk. They are not really mountains. They are more like high hills, but the natives refer to them as mountains. And in the interest of international goodwill, mountains they shall be. This is the top of Eagle Mountain. Supposedly, an eagle warned the people of an impending invasion. Mama acts like this is daughter's first big break in show business. This is the summit of Mashuk Mountain. This temple is the last remaining evidence of a people who lived here in ancient times. They were believed to be sun worshippers. Although Pyatigorsk is bordered on three sides by rolling hills and mountains, the area is a large producer of grain. The crops are raised in the valleys between and on the gentle slopes of the hills. Corn is the staple crop and is grown for feed for dairy cattle and another important industry of this region. This area enjoys a mild, temperate climate. The winters are short with frequent cold rains and fast melting snows. The summers are marked by many short thunderstorms. The rainfall is augmented by an unlimited supply of fresh water piped in from the encircling mountains. Many acres of the arable land in this section of Russia is given over to the cultivation of a rather unusual crop, sunflowers. Our guide Lisa claimed the seeds were used as food for man, birds, and beasts. Because of Lisa's insistence, we ate sunflower seeds. Personally, they are as frustrating to eat as pistachio nuts. You never could get enough in your mouth at one time to really taste them. We shall make a quick stop at a chicken farm on our way to a dairy ranch, where we shall make another quick stop. Russia has such tremendous land area, and we are covering so many miles in such little time, each stop must, of necessity, be quick and short. By the way, the impressions and opinions expressed in this film are my own and are open to argument by anyone holding to a different viewpoint. My impressions spring from a hasty look at the face of Russia. This farm has 5,000 chickens, and of course it is state-owned. It is operated on a system that our chicken ranchers discarded many years ago. All the eggs are gathered each day from hundreds of nests in the many individual hen houses. The chickens are free to forage for food and are an easy prey for predators and disease. I'm sure this farm is not typical. The Soviet Union that equals and perhaps even surpasses us in space technology must know of a better way to raise chickens. I'm not sure, but I think this is how you catch chicken pox. Dairy farming in this area is one of its most important industries, and the production of milk is a very important activity. For many years after the revolution, when farms were being collectivized and the peasants faced confiscation of their herds, they secretly slaughtered their cattle for food, and milk production dropped way below the needs of the nation. Only since the Khrushchev reforms of 1958 has milk production risen and is now approaching a supply and demand balance. Like the poultry ranch we just left, this farm too appears to be using obsolete, inefficient methods. However, there is one milker they are using that is as modern and functional as milkers anywhere. The camera will swing over that way again, and there it is. This too is a state farm. All proceeds of the farm belong to the state. On a collective farm, peasants of an area band together and buy the equipment and all supplies. They sell the output of their acres to the state, and then divide any profits among themselves. Only after the much-needed reforms of 1957 and 58 has there been even a chance of success for this system. Our last stop on today's tour will be a horse farm. Even though we are in the Russian boondocks, we can't get away from this guy Lenin. I wonder if the Russian people know the kind of a person he truly was. These horses, we were told by the overseer, are racing thoroughbreds, much like our own breed, and pure Arabians for riding. This is the homeland of the Cossacks, and all the world knows what great horsemen these people are. According to our briefing, many horses raised on this farm went on to become racing and show horse champions. From the pasture, we went to the barns and corral. The farmhouse was guarded by a little dog whose bite has just got to be worse than his bark. How about that? A dog with laryngitis. Again and again, we were made aware of the friendliness of the Soviet people. Just to accommodate our small group, all normal work and routine was suspended while we were their guests. All their personnel did everything they could to enlighten and entertain us. This gentleman is the director of this ranch. In his office, he spoke to us through an interpreter. According to his story, too many previous visitors have gone back home and told exaggerated tales about living and working conditions on this ranch. He pleaded with us to tell nothing but the truth. He asked no more than that. What he was concerned about wasn't apparent to me. I could see no reason for a lie. Nevertheless, he proved to be a most gracious host. We watched the horses while the farm families watched us. They seemed to be puzzled by our troop of harmless-looking Americans who appeared to be no different than themselves. We were not the merciless warmongers their Kremlin propaganda led them to expect. And by the same token, we know that the politics of the Kremlin does not make good people bad people. I like to think that our visit was adding another tiny spark to our warming friendship. For our last evening in Pyatigorsk, a program of native songs and dances has been arranged. The evening was very beautiful, so we leisurely strolled to the town hall where we were treated to a program performed in our honor. The caliber of the talent was surprisingly good, for these are not professional performers. All are shop, factory, and farm workers who find enjoyment and relaxation through community singing and dancing. In Russia, the ballet is a way of life. The search for ballet talent reaches almost every child in the nation. To perform in Moscow with a Bolshoi is their highest ambition and is a very great honor indeed. The songs and dances of the Cossacks have always been highly entertaining. Here in the heart of the Cossack country, we are seeing and hearing the genuine article. show ends, and so does our interesting visit to Pyatigorsk. In the morning, we board a bus for the longest surface hop of the tour. It is 200 miles from here to Tbilisi. To get there, we will travel the legendary Georgian military highway through the heart of the Caucasus Mountains. This is a glimpse of old Russia, where people lived in and owned their individual homes. Now they are assigned to these dwellings by the state. This is the first gas station that I have seen in Russia. There must be many places in the cities to gas up, but evidently they look much different than our own superstations, because I can't recall seeing any. Or else, I looked without seeing. We were told this is the last place one is able to get gas this side of the Caucasus. Next station is in Tbilisi. The equipment of this station is outdated by perhaps 20 years as compared with the USA. From what I have seen and experienced up to this point, it is my opinion that the Russian economy is at least 20 years behind our American standards. We are now on the great Georgian military highway. Its southern terminal is 128 miles away at Tbilisi. This ancient fort guarded a narrow pass through which countless invaders have come and gone. They came since way back in the dim centuries when history was first recorded. In our time, it was Hitler's hordes who have come and gone. These mountains form a natural boundary between Europe and Asia. The range extends for more than 700 miles from the Sea of Azov to the Caspian Sea. There are gentle green slopes where sheep and goats thrive, and there are rugged, awesome peaks rising higher than 18,000 feet. The width of the Caucasus Range varies from 60 to 130 miles. The history of Caucasia is one of raids, strife, and warfare. In earlier days, the women were in perpetual danger from the Turks in the south, who would steal them for their harems. The Kingdom of Georgia in the south was constantly fighting some invader for her freedom. Not until 1864, when this region was conquered by Russia, did some semblance of peace and security come to this land. It was at this time that Russia was compelled to complete this highway that she started in 1814 in order that she could assure communication and enforce her will on the nations south of the Caucasus. This highway is always described as the Great Georgian Military Highway. Undoubtedly, it must have been a stupendous engineering feat back in 1814, but today it is mostly a one-lane, rough, bumpy, rocky trail with many washouts and very few points where oncoming traffic can pass. But it is majestically beautiful. This spectacular land of awesome glaciers, sheer, towering rock walls, and verdant green valleys is the same land where Jason and the Argonauts sought the Golden Fleece. Here also, according to Greek mythology, is the mountain where the Titan Prometheus stole fire from the heavens. In recent years, during the Second World War, the mountain people welcomed the invader Hitler as a liberator and fought with the Germans against Russia. After the defeat of the Axis, Stalin had his revenge. Thousands of the mountain people were rounded up, herded into cattle cars, and shipped to the hot, arid plains of Kazakhstan. Not until the dictator died were the survivors allowed to return to their beloved mountains. Even so, in spite of the great resentment the numerous Caucasian tribes harbored for Russia, rule and unification by the Soviet Union has been and is good for them. No longer is it necessary to travel through the Caucasus with an army for protection. The people live in peace with each other and are now exploiting the vast mineral resources of these fabled mountains for the benefit of themselves and all the Russians. We arrived in Tbilisi late at night and immediately hit the sack. Next morning, we were up and about early. Our hotel is a typical example of the hurried, poorly crafted structures being built all over Russia. Refrigeration is inadequate, so these men drink room temperature beer, about 90 degrees. We tried it, and it was putrid. Our rooms lacked many conveniences, but did have the essentials. The mirror wasn't nailed down, so you could place it where it was needed. A toilet is a necessity, but a toilet seat is a non-essential luxury. Plumbing was exposed, plaster was never troweled smooth, and the lock on the bathroom door was broken and useless. When we complained of these irritating annoyances, the management was disinterested and unsympathetic. Unimportant, petty details to them. Modern, adequate housing is needed now. They must build thousands of high-rise apartments throughout the whole Union fast. Much of this quick construction is bound to be unavoidably shoddy. Nevertheless, the poorest of them is infinitely better than a hovel. These slabs are rough and porous. They have the know-how to make them smooth, but it takes time, and the need for many is urgent. Rough or smooth, the strength is the same. There is no unemployment under communism. Actually, manpower is in short supply, and Russia needs so many material things. The women will be working alongside their men for many years to come. Tbilisi is one of the most exotic and fascinating cities in the USSR. It is the capital of the Soviet state of Georgia. This city was founded in the 4th century before Christ. Its people, customs, and architecture are more Middle East than Russian. Tbilisi is situated in the valley of the Kura River. Its population of 800,000 souls is not yet affected by air pollution problems. Automobiles are relatively few. But the curse of polluted water has been and is a very real problem. The filth of the Kura can clearly be seen, but the boys do swim in it, and apparently without ill effect. It has been many years since clean water flowed in the Kura, and the end of pollution is not yet in sight. Tbilisi, being an ancient city, is rich with relics of the past. This temple dates back to the 11th century. It has not been in use for years and is fast becoming a ruin. We are looking through a window that is about 1,000 years old at a new government store that is about 2 years old. Quite a change in methods and materials, wouldn't you say? Religion is still very much alive in the state of Georgia. Legend has it that Christianity was brought to Tbilisi in the year 327 AD. The Georgian faith differs from the Greek or Russian Orthodox. Like so many facets of Georgian life, these freedom-loving people insisted on their own interpretation of what the church should be. These very pious monks and priests were a bit disturbed and embarrassed by our cameras. But the prospect of generous alms from what they considered free-spending Americans overcame their reluctance, and they rather grudgingly consented to pose. Khrushchev reforms made it possible for each of the peasants on collective farms to cultivate a small private garden. Everything they grow is theirs to eat or sell as they please. This is a free market where the products they raise are on sale. These bagels are being sold in a government store across the street from the market. All the time, at free markets everywhere, a happy carnival spirit fills the people. This Georgian gal insisted on cutting a rug for the camera. Maybe some of these people get filled with a different spirit. Remember when the knife grinder was a common sight on the American scene, 40 or 50 years ago? When the grinder came into the neighborhood ringing his bell, Mama gathered all the knives and shears in the house and had them all sharpened for 10 or 15 cents. I wonder how the state keeps track of his take. This is much like a farmer's market anywhere in the world. When the communist authorities were, in effect, forced to relax their rules against free enterprise, it is proof that pure communism cannot work. More and more, the Kremlin is using capitalist tools, albeit under another name. Eventually, they just might reach a utopian balance. The Georgian people have a reputation for being short-tempered and quick to anger. I can't understand how they are deserving of this onerous label. We Americans gave them just cause to blow their stack on many occasions. In 10,000 miles of travel throughout Russia, only once were we told to stop our picture taking. The market manager decided we were interested in showing only the lack of cleanliness and the heaps of garbage about the market. He scolded us and insisted we move on. We would move on to the next aisle and start in again as soon as he was occupied with others in our party. I watched him closely. I fully expected a glorious explosion of Georgian temper, but he calmly escorted us out until we decided to leave. Dating back to the 11th century is this church, the Tree of Life. It is the oldest active church in Tbilisi. The Soviet government is officially atheistic and ridicules the church and religion in schools, press, and radio. You are all familiar with their favorite phrase, religion is the opiate of the masses. In the larger cities of Russia, the authorities maintain religious museums where everything pertaining to religion is defiled and desecrated. The guides in these museums